Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We're the editors of Manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News, and we each have more than 20 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week again, it's going to be another wee week. Every week we cover the 5 biggest stories in manufacturing and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. We're also live every Thursday, so subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can get a notification whenever we go live. Jeff, how are you doing this week?
I'm good. I think I've recovered from my minor choking spasm before we started here, so I think I'm ready to go.
I mean, luckily you got your choking spasm out. I still said wee in the intro, so it's going to be a banger this week. But it's good to have you back. Are you feeling good about it?
I mean, in all honesty, I wish I was still in Eagle River, but yeah, it's good to be back. It's fun to do this, of course.
Yeah, it's always hard to when you're back in the car out, and you're just like,
As soon as I get off of Highway 8 out of Rhinelander, that's when it's like reality
sets
in.
At least I know that when I go up there, I have zero connectivity, so I don't have that moment where you're just like, I could work up here. You know, I could take a couple extra days, get some work done. It's just not even possible, and that helps.
See, that's the problem. I can work where I'm at, so it's pretty tempting to sit there and stare at the colors in the lake and everything else. So, yeah.
Just look at this. I'm trying to get my job done.
Straight out of a beer commercial up there. It's amazing.
Well, very good. Anna, how you doing this week?
Doing fine.
I mean, no stumbling for you yet so far. So, 1 out of 3 ain't bad.
You have set the stage for a very disrupted podcast now.
That's fair. We're gonna keep everyone on their feet this week. All right. Our sponsor this week is Workday. This week's episode is brought to you by Workday. 96% of manufacturers are increasing AI investments, mostly focusing on improving factory floor operations. The next phase of AI aims to tackle a new set of relevant challenges: ongoing labor shortages, regulatory changes, and economic uncertainty. This new ebook, Rethinking AI in Manufacturing, teaches you how to transform day-to-day processes across your organization with AI to benefit the workforce and stakeholders. There's a link to download this ebook in the live chat and in the body copy, our first story this week. Unmanned EV drives away after accidental parking command. A Show Me brand vehicle recently went viral after it drove off on its own while its befuddled owner chased it. The owner parked his SU7 outside a store, but then the blue vehicle, maybe it was teal, we're splitting hairs here, began to drive away. The owner rushed out of the store and chased down the vehicle, which was stopped before any damage was done. The car maker ran the data and offered a simple explanation. A command to self-park was issued by an iPhone, later confirmed to be the owner's. While Show Me shifted the blame and the owner acknowledged the device was his, the problem raises some bigger questions. So, Jeff, is there a missing step? Should another command be issued from a device before this car starts parking itself?
I don't think it's another device, but it's another block, another firewall, whatever you want to say here, because what to me was most concerning is, the auto manufacturer, the vehicle manufacturer says, well, it was the phone. Mm-hmm. The user goes, yeah, I guess it was the phone, but this other individual who does not own the vehicle, their phone was also found connected to the vehicle.
Oh,
so
okay.
If their phone can connect to the vehicle and they had no intent to do so, that's an issue. That's extremely scary. And this reminds me so much of all the stuff we talk about with OT or plant floor security, because we've got all this wonderful connectivity, that we've got all these new devices and assets that we can control and integrate and get data from, but we never stop to pause and take a minute as what else this connectivity means, which is anybody can get in. And if we're not securing that and adding another layer, like in this case, I think what they need is another firewall so that these foreign devices can't just log on there. If you're a hacker and you're reading this, this is an absolute dream scenario, because all these other automotive hacks that we've talked about with these vehicles, it's getting into the OE's network and then dispersing information through over-the-air, sort of a reverse engineered over-the-air update.
Yeah.
This is going right to the source.
Yeah.
This is a definite vulnerability that needs to be addressed by Zomi here, and really should really set the stage for best practices for other vehicles when we look at mobility and all this interconnectivity. It can't be this easy.
Yeah.
It just cannot be this simple for an iPhone to connect to a vehicle and essentially take control over it just by maybe a passing comment that was misconstrued by the phone and transferred to the vehicle. There's got to be another firewall in there. We talk about segmentation as a term that we talk about with industrial networks, where you can't just go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing without there being credentials or logins or whatever you want to say. Similar dynamic here. We got to get smarter about this stuff and take a little bit more time to examine what the bad guys could do. Yeah.
And when you worked up this report, I always like it because sometimes people think like that's a problem for tomorrow. And really it's a problem for today. And in the report, you said that some of the theories suggest that the feature was, quote, unintentionally activated through the iPhone app or its voice assistant. And for me, I think, okay, sometimes if it's been a minute since I logged on to my email from my laptop, I have to do two-factor authentication. I still need to hit, it's me on my phone. I feel like another step before your car starts moving on its own. That's not, I feel like that's fair. If I need a second step before I can lock my doors from my bedroom on my phone, it shouldn't move, with just like a passing comment.
Yeah, I agree. And, while Jeff was speaking to how this could be used in the hands of bad actors, I want to focus on how it can be used in the hands of good actors, people who own this vehicle, right? The story bothered me immensely just because we've seen other instances of where technology has become so advanced that it's causing these kind of unneeded problems. Volkswagen comes to mind because right now they're facing a class action lawsuit on a vehicle where owners are alleging that the steering wheel buttons are too easy to activate. It's like a haptic control type situation. They are alleging that just a very slight brush of the hand is causing this smart cruise control feature to activate, which is resulting in unintended acceleration, for example, sudden movements of the vehicle that they're not intending. The plaintiffs are arguing that those haptic controls are actually defective for that reason. VW at one point in time had changed from physical buttons and switches to these like sliders and capacitive touch points in their vehicles. So the lawsuit is alleging that all these impacted owners have been told by VW that they have experienced driver error. There's an issue of driver error. And that when I saw this Xiaomi story, to me that it was very similar, because I think the way they responded, I felt like there was this line of like, look, we figured out the problem.
And it's you.
It's you. We are absolved because this was a valid command from the user's phone. And I don't accept that as a response. I really don't. Like, I think technology should not function in this way. It indicates to me that there are not enough safeguards, as you said, and not just from a cybersecurity standpoint, but from an actual safety standpoint. If you can accidentally cause your vehicle to drive I know my voice command feature in my vehicle misunderstands me all the time.
Yeah.
And the worst that happens is it like brings up my map app when I don't want that or whatever, I'm like, but the fact that it's activated and we saw the video, I mean, it's really moving.
It is crazy. Like just two people. And so at first when I read the story, I thought it was a couple people, like a guy walks into a store, he's doing something and then, sees the car move away. But, they're in there setting up a store or something like that. Mm-hmm. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but it's just funny because they both kind of pop up like, is it moving? Oh, it's moving.
Yeah.
And then they like bolt out the door like, what are you doing? I don't know.
Oh, I know. And it's really not a stretch to imagine like that this feature could be triggered by a child that has your phone, or somebody could be in the vehicle when this takes place. I mean, it's just really not a good look for Xiaomi. And I thought that they didn't really take responsibility for that.
Well, and I'm always curious about like, how much do you want to blame user error and push back on that before you know a class action lawsuit's coming back the other way?
Mm-hmm.
Because how many voices do you need to hear? And this reminds me of how randomly Alexa will think that we're asking it a question or talking to it in the office, or in our house. When all of a sudden Alexa will pipe in and just be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that." It's like, because I wasn't talking to you, but it's like you had said some sort of something you said sounded vaguely like Alexa. And, made it start listening. And it is wild to me that you can have a car park itself. Like, where was it going?
Mm-hmm.
And just with just a voice command. I don't know. I think that I like that we're trying to. No, actually, I don't like that we're trying to make, basically cars consumer devices. I understand that that's where we're going. But I mean, we need to start asking if we need these capabilities. Do we need the ability, Jeff, to put your phone down and just say like, "Oh, that's right, I forgot to park my car. Go park yourself." And then the car just goes and park. Like, do we need that? Is that something we need?
I'm just laughing because you sound so old right now.
But I mean,
you sound like me. I'm the curmudgeon on this podcast.
That's fine. I'm willing to curmudge on this one. Yeah.
I mean, no, of course we don't. But when you start getting into these ultra competitive environments and what differentiates you and how can you best display the technology and the abilities and the innovation that you have as a product manufacturer, that's where all this comes from. Not because we need it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I think Graham Monk says it the best. His comment was, the problem isn't the new feature. The problem is poor regulation and dumb programmers. And hey, at least we still have programmers to blame. We're all replacing them pretty quickly with AI. So we'll see what happens next when there isn't even an actual human programmer to blame. All right. That's for another dystopian episode. Our next most popular story this week, 16 killed in massive Tennessee factory explosion. The Accurate Energetic Systems plant in rural Tennessee supplied and researched explosives for the military. Last week, an explosion at the factory killed 16 people and left no survivors. The cause of the blast remains unknown, and investigators are carefully sorting through the scene for possible evidence. State officials brought in a, quote, rapid DNA team to help identify the remains of people recovered at the site, according to the AP. About 300 responders are working methodically as they deal with explosive material that has been damaged and remains highly volatile. Explosive specialists and bomb technicians have even been trying to make the area safe for investigators. They even have an ambulance and a helicopter used for air evacuations on site for the safety of these first responders. The company processes explosives and ammunition at an 8-building facility that kind of sprawls across wooded hills 60 miles southwest of Nashville. The company has been awarded numerous military contracts, largely by the Army and Navy, to supply different types of munitions and explosives. The products range from bulk explosives to landmines and small breaching charges, including C4. In 2019, the company did face several small OSHA fines for violations of policies meant to protect workers from exposure to hazardous chemicals, radiation, and other irritants. Jeff, in a facility with such volatile materials, safety must be a priority, and bad things happen even if and when best practices are sometimes followed.
Well, there's a couple of reoccurring themes here, and I'm not going to belabor these things because we've talked about them before, but in most instances, once we get those final reports, it all comes back to time. Mm-hmm. People were rushing to get things done. They didn't take the time. You know how much I like to talk about blocking and tackling. Those things get avoided here when you're in a rush because there's time demands, there's customer demands. We need to get this done. We need to get it out the door. we still need to continue to take those extra couple of minutes to dot the I's and cross the T's on this stuff, especially when it comes to safety. And that is a cultural thing. Again, safety is culture. You can't reiterate that enough. And I'm a little bit leery in pointing out some of the sources here because they're definitely biased. But there were some reports talking about some employees who had raised concerns about some of the safety environments and some of the things that were not being addressed in this facility before. They do have a brief history with OSHA. There were some things that were brought to light previously, but sort of taken care of and brushed under the rug and not wanting to be addressed and not being correlated to this incident, a previous explosion, I believe, in 2019. So there's something there. And there's just, we see this so many times with these incidents where there was sort of a warning of what this could lead to, and it was not addressed for those reasons I just discussed. People get in a hurry, and they just don't have the inherent organizational culture to stop, take a minute, and make sure we're doing the right things. I'm not saying we don't know exactly what happened here yet. We're still waiting on the report, but that seems to be the reoccurring theme. And when you combine that with some of the other reports that have been provided, not substantiated, but been provided, we're going down this same course again. The other thing that this leads to, again, when we start getting into OSHA and some of the elements involved there with inspectors, I know Anna's going to talk more about this, is we need more of them. One of the sources here was the National Council for Occupational Safety and Health. Jessica Martinez is their executive director, and she was quoted as saying that across the country, we see too many employers in high-risk industries cutting corners while regulators lack the staffing, funding, and authority to prevent disasters. This is real. Okay, we continue to see these. We're seeing the Trump administration potentially offer some huge cuts. They've already done some things to some safety organizations. We're going the wrong direction there. This helps illustrate that.
Well, and one of the things about this report is that it said that they had faced small OSHA fines in 2019, and that word kind of stood out to me. Like, the OSHA citations are meant as a corrective measure, right? You face the initial citation, and then if you take corrective measures, then they're lowered, right, Anna? And so to me, I understand that we got to talk about the penalty being something a bit more severe so that way it doesn't happen again. But, sometimes these citations are offered and it should be both a red flag and, an opportunity to take corrective action and not necessarily, and it can be a situation where several good things happen as a result of it. It doesn't have to be strictly punitive is what I'm kind of getting at.
Yeah, of course. And, it's hard to know exactly what the scope of that 2019 situation was. Exposure to irritants could mean they just didn't have enough face masks. It's hard to know the difference between that and what happened recently, which was absolutely catastrophic. I thought it was interesting. It speaks to the dynamic nature of our news cycle that this was one of the most deadly industrial accidents in our country's recent history. And it was barely a blip, it seemed, in the news cycle. With all the other things happening, right? The shutdown, the job cuts, whatever. A lot going on, but it was difficult when you think of I know you guys remember when that situation happened in West Texas, how much news coverage that got, and I didn't feel like that was the same today, and I don't know why.
Not at all. And I also when you talk about this community, Bucksnort, I don't know if you were going to get into that at all, but it's 1,000 people, right? And this company in Bucksnort employs 115 people.
Yeah.
There's more than 10% of this entire population of this small unincorporated town. That is absolutely devastating.
Yeah. And for 16 people to lose their lives at their job, that's just, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I know investigators say that it could be days, weeks, months, maybe before they could actually fully rule out foul play. But I think it's important to mention also that we have covered many factory explosions over the years that have involved plants that produce explosives, ammunition, fireworks, and often these are overseas. I think we can generally they're overseas, but they do happen, I would say, not maybe routinely is the wrong word, but in the context of factory disasters, they are often involved, right? High on the list of risky places to work. And what concerns me is you want America to be better at regulating and policing these types of higher risk manufacturing processes, you expect that we're going to do a good job of that we're not going to be in the headlines for this type of situation happening, with some frequency.
Yeah.
And then you see the recent government job cuts that are hitting the very agencies that are tasked with keeping American factory workers safe. And you might not like how they're run. You might believe the standards need to be changed or updated. That's like a different discussion altogether, in my opinion. Completely gutting these agencies will not make them better, right? I think that's fair to say. Earlier this year, Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin noted that the new Trump budget would reduce OSHA's budget to the point where it would cut job safety inspections nationally by almost 10,000. Outside of these factories that are actually inspected, and I know not every factory gets inspected every year, but I do feel like the threat of that kind of hanging in the background does encourage folks to compliance. If you have the threat of your factory being inspected, fined, shut down, maybe you are a little bit more meticulous about how things are run and how they operate. I don't think that it's going to make us better at keeping factory workers alive by gutting those agencies.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree in terms of where you want to be on the spectrum. I think that it's best to be on the gold standard in global safety rather than the cost of doing business.
The one that I want to call out there too, when you talk about the cuts, they're looking at that 12% cut and potentially an OSHA personnel. But the big one was earlier this year when all that DOGE stuff was going on. They cut 2/3 out of the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH.
Yeah.
Those are the folks that are the research arm of OSHA. That's where, when we talk about these best practices, that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
By analyzing the information and putting out better ways of doing this and safer ways to manufacture or do whatever. OSHA covers more than just manufacturing in the industrial sector. But that was a big one for me when we look at that. And then we look at situations like this where there are lessons to be learned and we're not going to have somebody with feet on the ground collecting that information to share with their peers.
Well, in talking about having feet on the ground, once the area is clear, authorities can finally get in and start investigating what may have caused the explosion. But a lot of this relevant evidence they were talking about is spread out over miles, just because there were people 30 minutes away that were woken up from their sleep because of this explosion. Truly powerful blast. It seems like a unique campus because Accurate Energetic Systems has a 1,300-acre complex in this heavily wooded area in Middle Tennessee with 8 different buildings kind of like spread throughout the area, as well as a lab. And that seems really unique to me just in terms of how it was fit into the geography. It also, these are decent paying jobs for the area, right? I mean, an entry-level job at Accurate Energetic Systems reportedly paid between $19 and $21 an hour, depending on what shift the worker was on, which was very good for the area. But a lot of people were commenting about how, when it comes to receiving sort of hazard pay for working in such a dangerous environment, that wasn't necessarily industry standard. All right. Our next most popular story this week. Manufacturer sues automation company over troubled factory overhaul. Andersen Corporation makes windows and doors, but the company made waves recently after it sued a provider of industrial automation systems for allegedly failing to deliver the equipment needed for a multi-million-dollar factory overhaul. About 5 years ago, the company contracted ATS Corporation to build automated equipment for an Andersen factory in Iowa. Andersen said that it poured millions of dollars into this Dubuque facility to make high-end windows for the custom home building market. But Andersen says ATS missed its deadlines, demanded millions in additional payments, and halted work on the project altogether. The work it did do suffered from design and quality control issues as well as, quote, poor project management. The equipment was 860 days late. 860. Anderson sued ATS for breach of contract and said that the delay resulted in financial damages and postponed the launch of new products. ATS has also been sued by GM and Illinois Tool Works in recent months. Now, Jeff, I've been known to miss a deadline or two, maybe be a little late for a start on a podcast, a time or two, but 2.35616 years late, kind of ridiculous.
And counting.
They
haven't gotten the equipment yet. Yeah. So there's just, sometimes these are isolated incidents and sometimes there's a pattern. And when when you look into a little more deeply the things that they encountered with GM and with ITW and now this situation as well, how do you not draw a correlation there and try to, and not sort of put it against the company as, is this the new way you operate? They could have done 100 projects seamlessly, perfectly, and with no issues. But when you get sued by 3 people, especially with the cachet of GM, ITW, and Anderson Windows, that gets people's attention. In particular, those who are investing in you. Mm-hmm. This company has seen a 15% drop in their stock price year over year. They have seen a 15% drop in new orders come in since the first quarter of this year. So people are reading into what they're seeing in these high-profile situations, and they're potentially losing some confidence in what ATS is capable of doing. Now, there could be a number of different variables involved here. We don't know because all of these cases are still pending.
Yeah.
There could have been supply chain issues. There could have been language in the contracts. There could be a number of different variables that impacted ATS's ability to deliver here. You wish ATS could provide a little bit more color.
Yes.
You understand why they can't because of some of the ongoing legalities of the situation. But overall, right now, as we know and we talk about all the time, it has never been more competitive in manufacturing, especially when you look at the categories that these folks are operating in. Something as price sensitive, as margin sensitive as Windows. I mean, everybody's looking at, if you're replacing Windows, it's an expensive proposition. Anderson is at the top of the line in terms of product cost and quality, maybe.
Yeah.
So all of those things are playing a role into these companies getting nervous when things don't happen on deadline and probably being more assertive in terms of how they're going after ATS and not as patient as well. And those are things that if you're going to be in this environment, you need to be aware of and be ready to address. It seems like there's, in addition to the inability to deliver on the technological side of it, there's probably a lot of communication issues going on here too.
Right. You can tell how competitive it is because like 95% of all advertising these days is ambulance chasers and window manufacturers. Anna, when you look at this story, for me, part of it is when it comes to bidding a job, right? You know, you always want to bid a job. You want to win the job, and you want to win the job and be as competitive as you possibly can be, winning the business and understanding that there's that gray area, right? Like that unknown where there's, what did they say? Like supply chain issues, cost overruns, stuff like that, where that's understood that that's going to go into every job. But I don't know, for some of these, it seemed like maybe they swung and just missed so wildly that, that it's going to hurt their ability to do business going forward.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that we know from Anderson's side and very little that we know from ATS side. But as Jeff alluded to, looking at what is potentially at this point a pattern to see a company that we know has its act together like GM, or Anderson, who described their meticulous preparation for this new line of machines. They were really planning for this implementation and going through every part of the process to make sure that the timing was right.
Yeah.
Makes me think that they're probably on the ball here. So for this to get so out of hand is really perplexing. ATS is a large company. They're not a fly-by-night. They have thousands of employees, multiple factories. The plaintiffs, Anderson, wrote in court documents that ATS has become so unwilling to continue its flailing attempts to perform its contractual obligations that it resorted to openly welcoming Eagle to terminate the party's contract for breach, undoubtedly hoping to obtain additional payment in the process without the need to attempt to perform any further. That's what Anderson is saying. Interestingly, ATS recently settled with another customer where the customer was required to pay ATS $134 million with no further work due. I don't know the circumstances of that. I don't know the circumstances of this. As Jeff said, I agree there's probably some legal reasons that they can't speak to what is taking place here. My guess is that there's overruns and they don't want, maybe Anderson is saying, no, we're not on the hook for this. ATS says, yes, we're not going to do anything until you pay us. Fine.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine that it's good for business to be involved in this much litigation among your customers on multiple recurring occasions. Like, that's terrible.
Yeah.
So if you can't say anything for legal reasons, I've seen plenty of companies consult with their legal team and come up with some nonsense statement, but at least address and say, like, hey, look, we look forward to when all the details can come out about this situation.
Come to light. Yeah.
So people will understand that the position that we were in as well. But to be completely silent, and then not to mention the ATS CEO stepped down this year, like very little was said about why. So I all of this stuff raises more questions, and it puts ATS in a difficult position that I think that they could remedy at least a bit by trying to be, as transparent as they possibly can without getting into any sort of legal situation. But you can say something. You can say, drop some sort of generic line, say something,
Blame COVID. Blame the pandemic. What's there? Blame tariffs.
Tariff. I was going to say, maybe there is a tariff connection here with not being able to source the materials they need or the equipment that they need or whatever the case is. But
who knows?
Yeah, say something.
Yeah, they don't know. They don't have the standard corporate playbook of scapegoating yet.
Right. Well, and as of now, all we have is Anderson's take on this, and they're talking about like how they were cycling through project managers that didn't understand the project, and this statement about they're inviting them to cancel the deals, see what happens kind of. It sounds like very aggressive. Mm-hmm. So you can't tell me there's no way for them to at least come back on some of those statements and say something. But
and you talk about the scheduling, how careful that dance is when it comes to bringing on a new facility, a new product line, how scheduled and how tight some of those windows are. Like when you're talking about a delay that's going to come up on 3 years pretty soon here, like that can be devastating for Anderson, in terms of its plans to launch what it was calling that E-Series product line. So I don't know. It's do you think we'll see more come out of it? At least in legal documents, we probably will, right?
It depends on if there's a settlement or not. If it goes to court, then probably, but if it's settled, then maybe never.
Yeah. Then it's just putting that little quiet black box where nobody knows
where so much goes.
No one. Yeah.
It's a full box.
Yeah. How about we decide to not talk about this ever again? All right. Well, our next most popular story this week. Ford could lose up to $1 billion as plant fire hobbles F-150 production. On September 16th, a fire took place at a Novelis factory in Oswego, New York. It leveled the plant's hot mill, the facility's primary aluminum sheet production area. The plant fire produced enough damage to pause production of 40% of the aluminum used in the U.S. automotive industry until early 2026. Now, that's a problem for Ford. Novelis is one of several aluminum suppliers to Ford and holds a lot of cards when it comes to metal used in the F-150. Evercore ISI analysts said the supply chain bottleneck could cause Ford to lose up to $1 billion just between now and the end of the year. Evercore believes there could be, quote, knock-on effects for other automakers like Stellantis and Toyota, but that this is, quote, largely a Ford issue. Notably, Ford designers switched the F-150 to a largely aluminum body several years ago to reduce weight in the vehicle. With Ford being the Novelis plant's biggest aluminum customer, the product fallout for its most profitable vehicle could be immense. Jeff, can Ford find a fix in time to skirt this billion-dollar bath?
I don't know that there's really another option.
Yeah.
I mean, they're kind of handcuffed here. The irony is one of the reasons you partner with a company like Novelis is because they've got all of these global resources that they can go to, and potentially there's some redundancy there in the event of something like this happening. But now with tariffs, any of that stuff that's coming in from China, even the UK, it's got a huge tariff attached to it. So that impacts costs, which then you have to pass along out ultimately to the customer. Now, the plan says they should be up and running by Q1 of next year. Q1 could be January, that could be March.
Yeah.
So the extent of this $1 billion loss that they're estimating, it could be more than that. If you've got a bunch of vehicles that basically are framed up with nothing, on that you can't sell, that are just sitting there in this weird state, that's a huge, huge issue, obviously. And it comes at just such a horrible time because in automotive right now, there's a lot of positive stuff going on. Ford had a huge second quarter, great sale, like their best quarter in like 5 years. We just saw September as the most EV sales ever in the U.S., had a great month there as well. So there's all this positive momentum that's building, and then you can't build a truck.
Yeah.
That's a huge problem. So it'll be interesting to see how they can come out of this, and it'll be interesting to see how they pivot with their supply chain, if they have to find a different supplier, if they have to go overseas. This is one of these things when we talk about tariffs, and aluminum specifically, aluminum and steel are such hot buttons because we got a neighbor to the north that has an abundant supply that right now is not cost effective to tap into.
Well, and it might... what I want to get into is some of the other models that might suffer instead, depending on if Ford is forced to make a couple of hard choices. But Anna, right now, when you talk about the supply chain for aluminum, it's hard to find a fix that isn't either extremely costly from the tariff side or just not available from the domestic side. It's just not there.
Yeah. And, I think we like to think that the supply chain for these major products, this is a major metal, are much more robust than they actually are.
Yeah.
Like looking into this, like this is crazy. So, you mentioned that Novelis would cease production on basically 40% of the aluminum that is sourced in automotive for the rest of the year. Because of the market share that they provide, this fire actually was enough to shift the overall outlook for U.S. aluminum prices. So I read a report by Metal Miner Insights. They were talking about in the wake of the outage in Oswego, conversion costs started to rise across U.S. mills. Meanwhile, the Midwest Premium, which is like a generic term for the regional price of pure aluminum, climbed to an all-time high. So the premium now exceeds the levels most market participants predicted following the implementation of U.S. tariffs. So it's even higher than they thought it was going to be after the tariffs. The report goes on to say that those same tariffs have made U.S. supply disruptions significantly more consequential. Outages, be they planned or unplanned, do not typically have a meaningful impact on the price of aluminum. But Oswego's absolutely did. And of course, this is largely due to a steep decline in imports. Imports had already declined by something like 12% in the previous month. The U.S. continues to be a net importer of aluminum, meaning the market requires offshore supply to meet demand. But tariffs, supply shocks, things like that have caused more companies to look for domestic supplies. Well, they're not available. So, the quote that I took away from Metal Miner Insights report that was most interesting to me, they said, the sharp irony of these collective efforts is that supply disruptions in the U.S. are now much more consequential to market conditions. This, in turn, presents an ongoing volatility risk to the price of aluminum. So the tariff situation has added so much potential risk and so much volatility to this raw material that you're going to see many manufacturers and businesses, automotive specifically, suffer under the weight of that because of one factory fire that took place. I mean, that's crazy to consider how, catastrophic that one event was to an entire industry. And Jeff, I don't know if I would look at Ford's September EV sales as positive momentum when you consider that many automakers had a huge August, September in EVs because that tax credit was about to be taken away. So I would look at the potential downside of that, which is they're not going to sell a lot of EVs after this. So they're dealing with more and more barriers, you know? So this is a terrible situation to put Ford in.
Well, it reminds me of the situation we were in with steel during the last tariff TIF, where you're talking to other manufacturers situation where we're talking to a lot of other manufacturers and they just couldn't get their hands on steel. Like the lead times were ridiculous. And I mean, when I see something like this, I think about the tremendous impact it's going to have on Ford. But like you said, every manufacturer of every shape and size. As I mentioned about some of the other models that might suffer instead. So according to Syracuse.com, Ford has actually stopped producing its high-end 3-row SUVs, the Expedition and the Lincoln Navigator, at its Kentucky truck plant because of the difficulties with the aluminum supply. Ford has also cut production on at a different Kentucky plant, as well as one in Dearborn, Michigan. Models that were affected there include Ford's electric F-150 Lightning, the Escape, and the Lincoln Corsair. So maybe Ford is already shifting, just saying like, hey, if we got to keep one going, it's the F-150 because that's the one that is by far and away the market leader. And you could see them making more drastic changes just working with what they have available.
Yeah, but you're just cannibalizing your business. And, the result is eventually going to be idling shifts, So that's the scary part is like whose job is going to be impacted by this now.
Yeah, it is a very scary situation. Jeff, anything else to add in terms of what Ford's options might be?
I think one of the reactions to this, for those who are pro-tariff, is say, well, this is going to encourage more investment in the U.S. in terms of building these facilities. Just pause for a second and think about how long it takes to get an aluminum plant up and running. Yeah. We're not talking about months. We're talking about 5-ish years. That's too long. That's not the way supply chains work anymore. That's not a viable solution or option. And then you can also look at potentially, more business for a lot of these current aluminum processing plants. Again, not taking into account that there are very specific applications for the products being produced at these facilities. To pivot, to try to absorb some of this opportunity, if you want to call it that, also just not a real viable option in the short term or really long term, because by the time you make that pivot, everything else is back online. So it does create a lot of sticky situations like Anna was alluding to where there's just not simple answers.
Yeah. Is the counter argument to that this just kind of enhances that like little difficult time period that is going to happen where like, so yeah, it's going to be tough for a couple of years, but then, we'll have more aluminum manufacturing potentially come back to the U.S.?
But then everything adjusts again. It's the way that the capitalist economy works is it's sort of self-recovering. Yeah. It's self-healing. And when you throw a wrench in there and you try to force something to get better before it's ready, it doesn't work. It just creates an over surplus, and then we drive prices down, and all that investment that was made in U.S., in this case, aluminum manufacturing, is lost because the margins are gone.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was me I was just like, isn't that what we hear the counter argument saying? That's all I'm saying. All right. Our most popular story this week. Auto parts suppliers CEO resigns amid accounting scandal. And now for my next trick. I shall make more than $2.3 billion disappear. It's going to be great. On Monday, the founder and CEO of First Brands resigned. A few weeks ago, the auto parts supplier filed for bankruptcy protection after an accounting scandal uncovered more than $2 billion in missing funds. Patrick James founded the company in 2013 after changing its name to First Brands from Crown Group about 5 years ago. The Cleveland company began buying and then cobbling together a number of aftermarket auto parts manufacturers through debt-financed deals. This is all according to the Associated Press. Acquisitions by First Brands included well-known industry brands like Fram filters, Autolite spark plugs, and Anco windshield wiper blades. Last month, the company collapsed and now has somewhere between ballpark $10 billion and $50 billion in debt. That is a gap. And it has less than $10 billion in assets. The fallout is far-reaching as multiple lenders helped finance First Brands' spending spree. Some say that First Brands may have been double borrowing against its invoices off its books. Lenders are looking to get paid, but First Brands attorneys told a bankruptcy court, quote, "It's not here. We don't have it. There's $12 million in the bank account today. There is nothing else. Emergency motions have been filed looking for as much as $2.3 billion that has, quote, simply vanished. Jeff, First Brands may have changed its name from the Crown Group, but it looks like they're still the king of bad business.
I don't know if I would.
No golf clap for that one.
Applaud that
No
one.
golf clap for that one.
Just more of an eye roll for me.
So really, in reality, if I'm understanding this correctly, this wasn't stolen. It just was never there, right? The 2.3 billion, because they were basically inflating their sales in terms of what they were telling people they had, so they could borrow more money.
Yeah, I mean, it was there in terms that they took it.
Well, right.
Yes.
But what they had to initially borrow against was never really there.
Correct.
Complicated scheme. I mean, some of these financial investigators deserve so much credit because they don't have the beautiful mind that you do.
Yeah.
In terms of
where it just makes sense. You
can see these numbers.
Sense. Yeah, I was looking at the many tables of the many lenders that were owed so much money that instead of saying how much they were at risk or on the hook for, it just said unknown. That's a really scary proposition.
No kidding. Well, and it's kind of crazy, too, when you look at this. So First Brands acquired 20 different companies between 2018 and 2025. They spent about $4 billion on this. Now, on the surface, you're thinking, that's not bad, okay? Because roughly they're spending somewhere in the neighborhood of, and you're the numbers guy here, I don't want to steal your thunder, but somewhere around $30 million a year to acquire all of these companies.
Yeah.
That seems very manageable, except when you start looking at some of these companies, because you can look at Fram oil filters and say, what a brand, that's incredible. But you have to look at the DIY market in terms of how is this really going. Now, right after COVID, great market to be in. Since then, when people are getting away from doing a lot of this stuff themselves and they're going to, whether it's your dealership or another independent repair shop to get this stuff done, or the margins on those products are nowhere near as high as what they are at a retail level, this should have been a very scary proposition to put a ton of money into, because this is a roller coaster. Anybody familiar with the automotive aftermarket knows it just goes up and down. There's really no leveling out here. So these were risky investments to begin with. Then you throw in some, shall we say, creative accounting, and it gets real messy real fast. So just a huge mess. It'll be interesting to see how these lenders come out. I mean, it's affecting their stock prices and how people feel about investing in them. So the trickle-down effect is massive. Someone is going to end up getting these brands for a bargain, again, from when they're initially, just because First Brands is going to have to sell off all their assets to try to satisfy these lenders. So what a mess that I think we're going to be hearing about for a couple of years, and how this is going to affect the facilities and the plants that are making these products and the people working at them down the line. Keep an eye on some of these consumer automotive brands, because it could be a rough future ahead.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch if it goes to auction, what these assets are valued at, just because I agree with you. I don't think that these are consumer-facing brands that you're buying anymore. You're mostly hoping that you can leverage them to make bulk sales to your dealerships that are doing most of these repairs. Because I even thought, I'm like, oh, well, wiper blades, at least people are still doing that, right? And I mean, not really.
When's the last time you did that?
I did it, but I'm the crazy guy that changed his own tire too. So, but I mean, I understand that a lot more people won't even, they'll just pay a little bit of a premium to have it done while they're getting free Wi-Fi at the dealership. Anna, when you were looking at this story, what was your understanding in terms of, how were they able to get away with this for so long? I mean, is it as simple as they were like, okay, we got one set of books, we're going to go to 5 different banks and we're going to get loans all against that same set of numbers, and then we're going to worry about paying those back later?
Well, I think so. What was interesting reading up on this is that Reuters was saying that the bankruptcy of First Brands was impactful enough that it was causing some actual soul searching on Wall Street, which
yeah, right.
Souls.
Keep searching.
Yeah. Really, like,
let me know what you turn up.
Yeah, please let me know how your soul is. No, really, they're talking about how some of these firms are taking a second look at their exposure and some of the risk of being involved in these deals, because what can happen is in situations like these, there's just very little transparency about what that debt entails. So they can actually be bundled into like a mix of corporate loans, and you're just buying this almost like a bundle,
almost like the housing crisis.
Yeah, like a fast pack of like whatever debt, and you don't really know what that is. So Reuters had an interesting report. They interviewed Brian Mulberry, who's the senior client portfolio manager at Zacks Investment Management. He said, this will get attention because of the opaque nature of First Brand's structural complexities, and that could tighten standards for all lenders, which I thought was interesting because when you look at the list of lenders that are involved in this scandal, not their fault that it was a scandal, but there's a ton of companies, including, those that are probably involved in your state's pension plan or a 401k or something like this. Has impact on a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
So Mulberry said that one of the biggest risks in the private credit market is this lack of transparency and the rise of large public bankruptcies across the board. This year, they were talking about another one. I think it was called Tricolor Automotive. It was it was kind of a similar scenario where some of the lenders did not know the actual financial condition of the firm that they had invested in. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like if some changes are made, is that a bad thing? It seems like this is a lesson that maybe needs to be learned and applied. The U.S. Department of Justice has launched an inquiry into the collapse of First Brands. You hope its goal is not simply to just pile on responsibilities to this collapsed company, but maybe also to apply some lessons learned to the market and understanding how to better manage or even regulate some of these investment decisions and this exposure for the good of everyone who has a 401k.
Yeah.
But will it? Will that be the result? I don't know. I mean, you don't often see that, right? So
no, I mean, unfortunately, we've had so many financial crises to learn from, and here we are. I think going back to Jeff's point is important in that we look at this as just a big mistake on Wall Street, and it's just like, hey, maybe we could do something to stop it going forward. And sometimes we disconnect that from all the manufacturing jobs that it is connected to in terms of like that could just go away. Also, when it comes to that gap, Anna, when you see between $10 billion and $50 billion in debt, you couldn't get any closer between like narrowing well, I don't know. It's pretty big. It's anywhere in between 10 and 50, somewhere like.
But I think that speaks to the lack of transparency. And to Jeff's point, we don't know what these companies are worth. Once they untangle this knotted mess that they have created, then we'll know more about what that actual number is. But right now, not yet. Okay.
Well, here's thinking optimistically that we'll learn from it and prevent it from happening again going forward, right? Right?
Isn't that how it works?
Let's.
I mean,
slow down, David.
Sure. Don't you put the brakes on capitalism. All right. Now, before we jump into, in case you missed it, the stories that maybe weren't as popular on our websites, but could make a big impact on the industry going forward, we have another word from our sponsor, Workday. This week's episode is brought to you by Workday. 96% of manufacturers are increasing AI investments, mostly focusing on improving factory floor operations. The next phase of AI aims to tackle a new set of relevant challenges: ongoing labor shortages, regulatory changes, and economic uncertainty. This new book, Rethinking AI in Manufacturing, teaches you how to transform day-to-day processes across your organization with AI to benefit the workforce and stakeholders. There is a link to download that in the live chat. There's also a link to download that in the body copy. In case you missed it, story's not as popular on the website, but could make a big impact on the industry going forward. And Anna, the one that you picked this week, just when we're talking about a big impact on the industry going forward, like this could change the whole game.
Well, so the story I selected was about ABB selling its robotics division to SoftBank for $5.4 billion. And it was interesting because ABB issued a press release about it right away. And it was like kind of quietly covered, but not I don't know. To me, it was like, this is a huge story.
Huge story for the industry.
Yeah. So basically, here's what happened. ABB announced that it's selling this business to SoftBank, which is that Japanese financial holding company. They have a heavy emphasis in technology. They have stakes in companies like NVIDIA, T-Mobile. SoftBank founder Masayoshi Son called physical AI his company's next frontier, adding that together with ABB Robotics, we will unite world-class technology and talent under our shared vision to fuse artificial superintelligence, or ASI, and robotics, driving a groundbreaking evolution that will propel humanity forward.
We're gonna do it.
So, like, low stakes, right?
Yeah.
So Sun describes ASI, artificial superintelligence, as a type of AI that is 10,000 times smarter than any human genius. And he believes this technology is about 10 years away.
That's all we got. We got 10 more. Let's live them.
Yeah, I know. Make them count. This deal marks a strategy shift for ABB as well. The company said that earlier they had hinted that they were going to spin off their robotics division into a separate company. They opted not to do that. They sold it instead. Still, they're saying that their ambitions are unchanged overall. They're going to stay in electrification, in automation, and continue to innovate there. I selected this story because ABB is such a well-known company.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that everyone saw this because robotics is what they do. And so it was like, what? But also because of SoftBank's really aggressive ambitions around AI.
Yep.
And this so-called super intelligence that they expect to see within a decade. I didn't want that part to get buried in the story because, do you guys think this is going to take place? And if so, like, what does our world look like? Are we really doing this? Is this going to happen?
I mean, you clearly know where I stand. I feel like we've been headed down this path for a long time. And that was the one part that I wanted to make sure got pulled out too, was the next frontier that we're on. I do. I'm not as, subservient to the robot overlords as Jeff believes. I think I'm just a realist in terms of where we're headed, in terms of automation, and when we're going to have robotics in applications that were traditionally seen as non-automatable. So I do think we are. But, I mean, when we talk about this ASI or artificial superintelligence, I don't know. I think that when you say something like propelling humanity forward, like, which part of it?
Yeah, in what way? Is that a good...
I mean, I understand that there's a few that'll be propelled mightily forward, but maybe not everybody. But who knows? Hey, universal income. We'll see about it. Jeff, what are your thoughts on this ambitious timeline of all this army of robots that are 10,000 times smarter than the human genius?
Well, I think this is a little over the top, but what do you expect the guy to say?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We're going to do some neat stuff.
I've always been into robots,
I mean, this is part of the deal. When you buy something for $5.5 billion, you're going to make some pretty bold statements about what it's going to do for your company. The one thing that I would always put out there, and I think people forget, is even when it comes to artificial intelligence, we do have a choice. You don't have to use it. It's great that it's there. I don't have to use a large language model to write a marketing copy. I don't have to do that. Same thing with a lot of these other things. You can turn it off. I mean, I know the people you work with, maybe they're using AI for a lot of different things and it has a lot of great applications, but just because we can doesn't mean we have to. And it feels to me like that's coming more into the conversation now when you look at a lot of places where they looked at AI being just, it's going to be universally embraced. It's going to put everybody out of work and we aren't going to have any options. No, you have a choice.
Yeah.
You can decide not to if you want.
But people have one motivating factor, and it's certainly not propelling humanity forward. It is propelling financials forward. And I think when you look at your tool set and you can turn it off, there comes a cost to that, and that's why people won't.
That's true, but I do think too that there's a cost to use it, and there's so much money that's been invested in AI at this point that the amount that society at large needs to spend to recoup some of that cost. It is a really big number. There was just a report that was put out about this, about how much money needed to be spent on AI in the nenext 5 years to justify how much has been invested.
Yeah,
and it was insane.
Yeah, the AI bubble bursting.
Right. So I don't know what happens. I'm truly I have no opinion on this. I'm just watching it.
Yeah, I think that both things can be true. I think that the AI bubble can burst, and a lot of people that have invested heavily into it could go under, but the technology will continue to advance forward and be create revolutionary change.
I think it'll be embedded into our day to day, just like a lot of other things have, just like smartphones, and just like a lot of things that we can do with a lot of this new connectivity and mobility. However, again, I think we can control it the way we want to. I don't think it's going to be as imposed upon us as what is being presented in a lot of ways.
No, I definitely think that you can regulate to slow change, or regulate to put in, rein
When
it in.
you say regulate, do you mean like government regulations, or are you talking about personal filtering?
Both. Because you say that you can make a personal choice, yeah, but we can also regulate, we can make at a government level, we could say you can do this, you can't use it for that. Whereas we've decided to say you can use it for anything, and we'll figure it out later. And when we had some of the original stakeholders in AI say maybe you want to rein this in for a minute while we figure it out. I think maybe I'm more team proceed with caution than just let's see what happens. But
well, I think that's my point. I think most people are.
Yeah.
But you got individuals like this who are throwing this stuff out there, and I think it creates a lot of anxiety that isn't necessarily connected to reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I am interested to see it play out, and obviously this is a huge discussion, but there are very few businesses that would benefit from every consumer losing their job and being bankrupted and never buying anything again, right?
Correct.
So something needs to merge those two desires together to cut your labor costs, but also your labor is what drives the economy. So figure that out. That's
good. Universal income. It would have to happen if all of a sudden we have true lights out 24/7 manufacturing and no one has any means to buy anything.
Correct. Yeah.
Or
it's not going to work that way. So yeah.
Nope. And so that's where something like universal income comes in. You can't have one without the other, Jeff.
I think we should move on.
I was about to.
Okay.
I had taken the breath. I was like, Jeff, in case you missed it this week.
Well, it's an interesting topic that we've discussed before, but it's got a unique application.
Okay.
The story I picked was tariffs have the potential to reshape the U.S. beer market.
Whoa.
Oh, man.
So the U.S. beer market, $117 billion. And the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign put out a study about this and in relation to the food supply chain. And basically what they found out with these tariffs is going to be kind of interesting because the biggest impact would be on, obviously, imported beers. Now, that includes stuff from Mexico, where we get a lot of beer. And I know we have some fans of Modelo in this room.
Yes, people call it the Modelo.
Yes. So what this study is projecting is the biggest benefactors from some of these imported beers and the prices that may be kicked down to the consumer and driving up costs are domestic beer makers, not craft beer makers, but the larger beer makers. So think about your brands like Budweiser and Miller and Coors and folks like that. Because they're going to be able to come in because they produce more beer domestically here, offer it at either the same price or at least lower than a lot of those other popular beers that are coming in from Mexico and Europe. Whereas the craft brew makers are going to be kind of stagnant in the fact that they may not be affected by price, but if these larger beer makers then are buying up all the barley and hops and everything else, and they need to expand their supply chain to go outside the U.S. to get those ingredients, then their prices are going to go up. And they're not going to be able to be benefiting from a lot of these market share that's going to be realized because of the increased price from the imported beer. So it's just kind of interesting to see how all of this stuff could play out. The biggest takeaway I had is, I'll buy craft beer regardless because I like the stuff from my garage fridge, which is going to be the more domestic, larger brands. But I also, when I'm going to have a couple of beers, I'll pay a little bit more to have that craft beer that I think tastes better. So there's a balance there, but how that could affect the overall market. And in reality, I think one of the funniest things when you think about it is by placing these tariffs on imported products like Modelo and Corona specifically, they're actually going to help a company or a brand like Bud Light to grow.
Yeah.
So
Which owns them all.
it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition when you look at how all of that fits together, politically, personally, all that kind of stuff. But interesting to see, and I think this also illustrates the fact that we don't know so much about how all these tariffs are going to affect something as basic, or at least in my life, pretty much a staple of what I buy in beer. And there's still a lot to be figured out, but an interesting potential impact.
That is wild that the U.S. market for imported beer has increased from 14% to 24% since 2013. Mexico alone accounts for approximately 83% of U.S. beer imports, meaning roughly 1 in 5 beers consumed in the U.S. comes from Mexico. That is wild.
1 in 5. That's crazy.
Anna, when you looked at this story, were you thinking about how these tariffs could impact your beer consumption methods?
Well, my beer consumption is pretty low, but still I'm pissed.
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, Wisconsin is a beer producing state. I mean, that's kind of what we do. So any ripple effect that this has is going to impact the many craft brewers that we have here, as well as some of those bigger macro companies. So I'll be interested to see on the shelves what this does. We'll have to keep an eye on it
and how
see.
it affects consumers' habits. You know, are they going to say, "Well, this is I'm loyal to this brand. This is what I'm going to continue to buy," or not?
Well, one of the analysts in this article said that it could hurt craft brewers, and if they start to falter, it could have far-reaching implications on local economies. Just when you think of, I mean, those are like a cornerstone of a lot of small local economies. Producer Eric has recently been doing some of his own research. He said that Tuesday for the Brewer game, Modelo, or his Modelos, were $16.99 for a 12-pack. 12 are of High Life, $11.99. Already starting to see it, Jeff.
You can get
Well, I mean, High Life has
a
been on
12
the
pack for $11.99.
sure.
Yep. You got to shop smarter, I guess.
I buy craft beer too, so
You're looking at like the 4-pack that's 25.
What's interesting with that is I can get some of my favorite beer, which is the New Glarus Staghorn Seasonal Oktoberfest beer for the same price he's buying at Modelo.
Whoa.
At Costco. Go to Costco.
I keep hearing all about Costco, but not yet. I'm not ready to pull the trigger yet. Not ready. My In Case You Missed It this week was about an engineer who won a pumpkin contest with a 2,346-pound gourd, because that's just glorious. A California engineer won the top prize at an annual pumpkin weighing contest in Northern California after he grew a pumpkin that weighed 2,346 pounds. Brandon Dawson, hero of Santa Rosa, California, lost by 6 pounds last year, and it just really stuck in his craw. He's a manufacturing engineer at Rivian Automotive, and he's actually been growing massive pumpkins for 5 years. He said that his precision skills acquired at his job may have helped him with the right watering and sunlight to help his gourd grow. Now, I picked this story because we have readers, listeners, and viewers that have a very particular set of skills, and you never know how they're going to be used outside of the office, and if they can be used to grow a massive pumpkin, I say you do it. I say that makes the world a better place. Like, let's think of the tomatoes, the squashes, other things like that we could, abnormally large hens. Let's get in there and mix it up. I obviously picked this story because to me, it was a feel-good story about, an engineer and what he does sort of in his off time. He also talked about how he got his family involved. Some of the things that blew my mind in this story, did you know that, giant pumpkins can grow by 50 to 70 pounds a day? That is... you could see it happening. Yeah, so he talked about his kids were like 2 and 4, I think, and so they got into it because they would go outside the next morning and it was just significantly larger, growing 70 pounds a day. That is huge. It's like growing 7 large pumpkins and attached to it. I mean, I don't know. I thought it was wild. The pumpkin champ, he won about $20,000 in prizes for growing the biggest pumpkin. The payout is $9 a pound. Interesting. Last year's winner actually weighed 2,471 pounds. The world record, which was set either this year or last year, I can't remember exactly, 2,819 pounds. So something for Dawson and his family to aspire to. I chose this story because I always like any story that starts with engineer does X, and the weirder, the better. And I just thought it was kind of cool that, this engineer in California who works at, arguably one of the, maybe the second biggest EV manufacturer out there, Rivian, is also doing something really cool in his time that's not only benefiting his community, but his family, and just an overall feel-good story. So kind of a reminder that, what you do in your off time could still make a big impact on the industry as well. Jeff, your thoughts on that one big pumpkin?
Can you process these? Like when they're this big, can you
That was my question too. What did they do with it?
Yeah. I mean, I think you get a fair amount of, I think you can still process it into like pumpkin paste that you can use to bake,
I bet it tastes bad.
I don't know.
I mean, are the seeds bigger?
I don't know. That is a good,
is it like the size of your cup?
Yeah. Look at these seeds. Oh, to roast that pumpkin seed? I don't believe so. But, I mean, have you ever processed just like a normal sized pumpkin? There's no way that you could make enough baked goods to actually feel like you are using it all. Yeah. So I'm sure that there's plenty of that goes to waste.
Just like a shovel scooping out the inside,
Yeah,
I'm sure
slipping around.
Use it for feed or whatever. No,
Yeah.
this stuff's crazy when you see how big these things are, especially when you see the scale, like when he's standing next to it.
They use a forklift to like put it up on the scale. No, it's, and I mean, you also use a fair amount. You can use pumpkin puree and chili. So, feed the world, like World Chili Day. No, it was, I thought it was pretty incredible. Anna, your thoughts on Brandon Dawson's pumpkin?
I just feel like there's got to be more to it than the right watering and sunlight.
You just see him like at night, like just steroids and hormones going into that.
Yeah, like pumpkin growth hormone, whatever somebody sold it to him on the street.
Isn't this like the origins of a horror story or something here?
I mean,
I think it moved. I think I saw it move.
Like all of a sudden the like stem grows and like grabs him, eats him. It reminded me of the fishing scandal at first, because I'm like, I feel like at the end of this they must cut it open to make sure there aren't weights in it, or like, he was like injecting lead into it, just like like how's it so heavy? Don't you worry about that, and probably don't touch it. Kind of stay away.
Yeah,
like when they're just yelling like, we got weights in the fish.
Oh, there's a ton of bowling balls in here, you guys.
This thing is full of bowling balls. But I mean, at a base level, it's kind of cool how he can take his sort of precision analytical look at doing things, incorporate his family, and just grow a big gourd. How
do they weigh it? Like with they put it on a forklift, and then
I think so. It was like on a forklift, and then it has like the harness wrapped around it, and then the forklift kind of pulls out of it, and it drops, and then it. Like right at the top of the pumpkin. Like we actually had a video with this post. You can see the display right on top of it, because then not only does he know that he wins, but they know immediately what the prize is. And it just seems like such an odd amount. Like
horrifying. Yeah.
Don't get under that thing.
No.
But yeah, the expressions from the kids on that thing, just like, oh God.
I know, it's cute.
You see that thing?
Yeah.
Carving that thing would be incredible. As long as, no lead inside.
Chainsaw.
Giant chainsaw. All right. Well, before we get out of here this week, I definitely encourage you to watch that video. Go to in.com. Probably just search one big old pumpkin and check it out.
Big old pumpkin.
One big old pumpkin. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
I had a big birthday in the family yesterday for two of my children who share a birthday.
Yeah.
They are twins. Someone the other day at school drop-off was like, so they have the same birthday, huh? But they're not twins. I'm like, oh, no, they are.
It's amazing how people don't know what fraternal twins are. They think twins identical or no.
Yeah, they look nothing alike.
It's crazy. Like, you want to know what's going on in their head. Just like, how do you think I did that? Like if they're not twins.
Yeah, so they are. We had a really fun time yesterday. And the cool thing about having twins is each of them gets to pick their own birthday cake. So there's always 2 birthday cakes every year, which is great for me.
Mm-hmm. That is
extra cake.
That sounds like you're cake rich right now.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, so we had a great day yesterday. So happy birthday, guys!
Well,
I know you will never see this, but
they will one day. They'll be like, "Hey, what does Mom do again?"
yeah,
And they'll just like, I don't know. Let's Google it, and they'll find this moment.
they're like, "Are you on the news?" And I'm like, "No, but kind of." I don't.
It's a news program. It's the number one manufacturing news podcast in the industry.
It is.
No. My final.
You're not supposed to like joke about it. It's supposed to be like that's like a tagline type statement.
Yeah.
Oh,
with
sorry.
authority.
I mean, it is the number one news podcast in the manufacturing industry. Well, everything I wanted to say after that had a curse word in it, but believe it. I can't put emphasis on a statement without cursing. That's a problem. My final thought this week is that we did have a couple of people reach out to us this week with story ideas, and I just want to say that we're working on it, and we're going to reach out soon so we can develop those stories. Also, just be good to each other. Everyone's freaking out right now. Just be a good person. Jeff, your final thought this week?
So I was gone last week.
Yeah.
Mentioned I was up north, and my wife actually had a big week. She fulfilled 2 of her, I don't know if they were New Year's resolutions, but 2 goals that she had for this year. The first I had nothing to do with. She ran her 5K, her charity 5K. She did great. Very proud of her there. The second one I did have a little bit to do with because her other goal was to touch a live fish.
Oh,
Just
has
to
she
touch
never
it?
done that?
Well, usually when we are on vacation, and the girls and her are fishing, it's them catching the fish, and then it's a assembly line behind with me taking the fish off, putting the hook on, and them sending it back out.
Yeah, okay.
So she actually caught the fish, removed the fish from the hook
Whoa.
on her own.
That's-
So she was pretty
Way to
big
go.
week.
I could not do that.
Good stuff.
I'm very much, well, congratulations there.
Yeah.
And I very much look forward to when my kids can not only remove the hook from the fish on their own, but realize that the fish is on the hook so that way it doesn't swallow it entirely.
Yes.
And you're just like, they're like, where's the hook? I'm like, I don't know, 3/4 of the way through it at this point.
We did go through a little bit of that, but she did catch on. And I guess the point is, if you've made any of those resolutions, it's still October. It's not too late.
Still
You can
got
still get
plenty
after
of
it.
time. I don't know. I could maybe get 1/4 of the way to my resolution, but no. All right. Well, it's good to have you back, Jeff, and I'm
Thanks.
glad that you enjoyed the Northwoods. Jealous. Very jealous. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us every Thursday when we go live. All right, for Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.